Hi everyone, welcome back to Angela's Craft Room, independent Stampin' Up demonstrator in Australia. Today I've just come with a really quick tip for you on a really easy way on how to make your bases for your easel cards. Now the easel cards, people think they're really hard to make sometimes, but I'm just going to show you how I make my easel card bases, and it's quite easy. So to get started, what I use is to get 2 bases out of 3 square cards. I've used these measures 11 inch by 5.5 inch, and I have 3 of them. So that's 11 inches by 5.5 inch. So with one of them, we're just going to cut that one straight in half. So they're 11 inches. So we're going to cut that into 5.5 at 5.5 inches. So that gives me my 2 fronts for my 2 easel cards. So then I'll take my first 11 inch by 5.5 inch. And I'm going to score it at 2 3/4. Score that at 2 3/4, and then I'm going to score it again at 5.5 inches. Okay. And then I take my second piece, and I'm going to score that one at 2 3/4. And then score it again at 5.5 inches. Now remember, I've only had 3 pieces of paper to start with, each measuring 11 inches by 5.5 inches, and then I've scored it at 2 3/4 inches and 5.5 inches. Then I'm going to take my bone folder, and I'm just going to burnish those edges quite firmly. And then you have your first easel card. Now how easy was that? You just take, now remember at the beginning I cut the first sheet in half at 5.5 inches. So one I'm going to use as my front for my card. Now a tip is, I do suggest that you decorate your fronts before gluing them onto here. Then just apply some wet glue onto this part, so you're only gluing the bottom of your front, because once that's glued on there, say like that, and you turn it around, you wouldn't have applied glue to anything up here. So it's going to look like that at the back, like that at the side, and you're going to put some cardstock, some designer series paper I normally do, and I'll show you the finished one I've done. But what I've done with the one I've done, I've actually made a template for a flower pot. But just start off, if you haven't made easel cards before, just use the square first and make one like that. And I'll just give you a couple of tips at the end, and then later on I'll come back and I'll show you how I made the teapot, sorry, not the teapot, the flower pot template. It was quite easy, but I just wanted to do a quick tutorial to give you a hint on how easy it is. So, and then the other piece we scored that at 2 3/4 as well, and again at 5.5 inch. So this was just using 3 pieces of cardstock that measured 11 inches by 5.5, and we scored it at 2 3/4 and 5.5, and that made our second. So from 3 pieces of cardstock 11 inches by 5.5, we have 2, and once you've start putting cardstock on, they will sit a lot better. So by using 3 pieces of cardstock that measured 11 inches by 5.5 inches, we cut the first piece in half at 5.5 inches, and then we scored the other 2 pieces at 2 3/4 by 5.5, and then we burnished them with our bone folder, which gave us this base, and then we have the 2 fronts for our card. It's just a really quick and simple way to make two card bases for easel cards. Now, just with this one that I did, and I will come back at a later point and show you how I did the template for the flower pot, but just have a go at using just the square for now. That's how I started off doing easel cards. And then, as you can see, I always like to put a mat underneath each section, and it just gives more, makes the card heavier, and it sits very easily. Okay, so I've just used Old Olive cardstock there and there. On here I've just used Old Olive, and then I've used some lovely design series paper from Pretty Petals paper stack, and the same as on the front, I've cut a piece of the olive green cardstock and then the designer series paper on top of that, and then I've used the ovals collection to make myself a oval with the olive green cardstock, and then the Pretty Petals DSP, which is the next smaller down. And then I've just using the Sassy Solicitations, one of the sentiments from that stamp set, I've put that on there, thinking of you. Now, how you get the lift is under this first piece of the green olive, I've added dimensionals and then stuck it down there with dimensionals. And then this very top piece, I've added dimensionals on that as well to give it even more height, so that when you have your easel card, it will lay flat, but then when it's on display, it's just going to sit right behind that sentiment for me, because I've added those dimensionals underneath. Okay, well, I hope you like that as a quick tip, and I hope you'll give the easel card a try. Thank you.